All right, so we're going to discuss rule of acquisition number 6. Rule of acquisition number 6 is revelation versus critical extrapolation. Okay, so let's say, vertically speaking, you learn the concept of multiplication. Once you get the concept of multiplication, you then work on examples of problems or challenges with multiplication. The horizontal expression of the art of performing multiplicative application, arriving at a product, okay, arriving at a result of a multiplication, okay. 4 times 4, you arrive at 16 is an example of multiplication. But once you get the concept of multiplication, so I'm going to say that the concept of multiplication is similar to revelation, okay. So when Father brings revelation to the world, when God through Father had brought the revelation of what happened to Mary, the revelation of why the elder son and the younger son positions were swapped, the revelation of what the fall is, Father brought so many revelations, and I'm not going to deal. What I'm going to deal with is the relationship between the vertical concept or revelation and then what I call a critical extrapolation. Critical extrapolation is your 5% to understand how the revelation changes the outlook for our life in the physical world. Okay, so you have to unpack the revelation in the context of your life. Like, what does it mean that the fall was a sexual thing? Well, that means so many things. It means like you have to repent not only for any sexual fall that you had, but you had to repent for the sexual fall itself, the entire culture that has emerged from the sexual fall of Adam and Eve and every single ancestor that you have. You have to spend time pondering the outgrowth of the entire culture, right? You have to extrapolate what the fall has meant in human society. You can't just apologize or try to have a reckoning with the fall itself. Say, oh, I understand what the fall is. No, do you understand what the fall has come to mean in your life and in the society you're dealing with? So when you come to understand what it means, then you can divide the good from the evil within yourself and within your culture. Well, you have a lot of unificationists living within a toxic. This is a mild word. Toxic is a mild word. You have a lot of unificationists living in a toxic environment. In other words, they are going to be killed. Their children are absolutely slated to be killed. And because they haven't done the critical extrapolation, they are lamb to the slaughter. So here, when I say it is our job to carry out critical extrapolation, this is rule of engagement number 6, saying that if you don't carry out critical extrapolation and you're not around somebody who's arming you with critical extrapolation, you won't even understand some of the callings that you experience here in the settlement age. Why? Because settlement age is a call to wrestle the external circumstances of the world. There have been a lot of religious people, they say, oh, in the world, but not of the world, right? Or a lot of religious people who say, oh, everything that's not of the church had been called profane. That's where the word profanity comes from. It doesn't mean necessarily curse words. It just means the attitudes of the world. Well, settlement age means that we're going to take back the so-called outer world, right? And so there are revelations. You can't get revelations about the external world unless you extrapolate from Father's revelation, the critical, I guess, what the revelation is saying about the external terrain that you're living in. Okay. And going back to the fall, the fall had meant that parents were modeling a certain attitudes about sex, certain secrecy, certain shame, right, to this point where everybody feels that sex is associated with a shame. That's in the culture, right? And so the sickest thing is that Father brought true sex, but people still associated the shame of satanic sex and satanic mentality within the satanic culture about sex, and applied that shame to Father's talking about true sex. Okay. And that's because they haven't appreciated through critical extrapolation that the shame, it was not originally associated with sex itself. The shame was associated with a theft of sex from God's intention, like ripping God off. Okay. It was the thing that was stolen. Right. So if you look at the thing that you stole, the first thing that you see is your own shameful character. Okay. You got virgins who never did anything, never committed any sexual sin, but who adopt a shameful attitude towards sex because of culture. So they would disallow the moment. They would recoil, cringe, whatever, when Father's talking about true sex. And people would giggle. And he'd say, why are you laughing? I have to talk about this because from his point of view, it is the father's job, it is the parent's job to explain to young humans the purpose of sex so that they might become successful adults and use sex when the time comes as a lord. So you're supposed to learn those things. So he has to talk about those things. In this world, we get secret knowledge from, corners where, people are giggling and this kind of thing about sex. And then it propagates the shameful nature of sex. So we actually have sex in secret, dark places and whatnot. My point is there's a lot to unpack and think about how these things shape the outer world. You don't just say, oh yeah, I'm familiar with Moon's Revelation. So I will say this. In order to succeed in the fourth Adam's era, we need to have openness to critical extrapolation as our portion of responsibility. Critical extrapolation, not just revelation. It is a part of our 5% portion of responsibility. Unfortunately, in the process of extrapolating, our fallen nature and wishful thinking drive towards warped extrapolations. And we're afraid of this. So we are afraid of our own 5% portion of responsibility because we think we're going to mess it up. We are afraid of our own position as lords within this new era. We do not embrace the realm of fourth Adam. We assume we're going to mess it up. And this is a product of fallen nature. We are not on top of our fallen nature. So we're afraid that our fallen nature will absolutely corrupt this process. That's why we don't engage in anything beyond father's responsibility. We are afraid of our own 5% portion of responsibility. So that means we won't do lots of things, and critical extrapolation is one of those things. We have to own our mind. We have to iron out the revelation, and we are not a culture of embracing that responsibility so much. Anyway, if somebody comes into the fourth Adam settlement age talks and they are assuming that critical extrapolations are automatically some form of evil, there will be no discussion or an attempt to rectify this person's problem, because the fourth Adam settlement talks are for people who understand that it is our responsibility to carry out critical extrapolation for our times. There may be people among us who have better extrapolations than ourselves, and there can't be like infinite extrapolations. It should be set to our times, and so when we discuss what's going on for our world, what is the lay of the land today in light of the revelation? All right, you got it. There will be no fear propagation of our responsibility to own our mind and understand the revelation and what it means in our day. Okay?